What's up, Summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides meta update with patch 10.15 just around the corner. I'm here again to run you guys through what you need to know to find success next patch. Whether it's specific champions or general trends, we've got you covered. My name is Zyrene, and I'm going to run you through meta updates across all 5 roles, so make sure to stay tuned and up to date. Before we start though, feel free to answer our question of the day. Which champion do you believe will be pick or ban at Worlds this year? I've got a feeling that Ashe will be hotly contested for her incredible utility and strong laning phase. Let me know your answers in the comments below, and also let me know why. I want to read through your guys' thoughts. With that said, let's jump into the video. Beginning with the top lane, we don't have too much to talk about aside from some specific champions that are running absolutely amok and crushing it. These 3 champions are Volibear, Darius, and Camille. First up, let's talk about Volibear. Arguably one of the strongest builds on him right now is running Press the Attack and then purchasing an Iceborne Gauntlet and Wit's End. This build provides a bit of everything. It has magic resistance, armor, cooldown reduction, some damage, and even sustain. Volibear's W activates on hit effects, meaning that Wit's End synergizes extremely well with him. This is a rather oddball build when compared to most other top laners who either build a Black Cleaver or Trinity Force. While Volibear does fill a similar niche to many meta top laners, don't fall into the trap of building the exact same 2 items you're used to taking on most Juggernauts or Bruisers. As for Darius, well, there's really not much to say. Summoner Ghost was buffed this patch, and that was basically a Darius buff, let's be real here. Ghost on Darius is super strong, and players are finding even more success with him than before. It's no surprise that his ban rate has climbed above 40% in high elo, and it's going to remain there unless the balance team takes action. The bonus movement speed unleashes the beast as it helps Darius players overcome his one weakness, his lack of mobility. With enough movement speed, he's an unstoppable solo queue star. Camille, on the other hand, has come out of seemingly nowhere. Various balance changes have gradually opened up the top lane for her once again. She's a great solo queue carry because of her versatile kit, as well as her incredibly high damage output. Although Camille has been in and out of the spotlight, she's begun emerging as a high performer. A big contributing factor to this is an optimization many high elo Camille players have been making. They've been using Grasp of the Undying quite often. This keystone upgrades Camille's trading power significantly. It fits her hit and run playstyle quite well in the early game, and she's still able to hit like a truck with or without a keystone in the late game. When used alongside Shield Bash, Grasp of the Undying can honestly feel pretty oppressive to play against. It becomes nearly impossible to win short trades against Camille, and slowly but surely she's able to win a lot of her 1v1s. In order to counter the meta, you'll need to have a couple of pocket picks ready. Ideally, one of these is Jax, because he has favorable matchups into many of the most popular picks, while also outscaling practically every other top laner in the game. Finally, let's talk a bit about tank top laners. It's not really possible to categorize them in a general sense. Some tanks are doing work, while others just aren't making the cut. The strongest tanks right now in the top lane are Malphite, Maokai, and Shen. While pro players value Ornn as well, he's set to receive a nerf next patch anyway. Also, Shen is getting buffed, so if you're a tank player, I'd suggest sticking to one of the former 3 we mentioned. Shen's shield is receiving a nice buff, and things are looking pretty good for him. Shield Bash is pretty OP on certain champions, so give him a try next patch. That covers the top lane, so let's head into the jungle next. With how the jungle meta is developing, it's no surprise that we need to talk about Kha'Zix. Quite frankly, he's extremely strong, and we heavily suggest that all you jungle mains out there pick him up. You never know when he's going to get through the ban phase, but statistics show that he does rather often. Kha'Zix's recent buffs have led to a ton of success, and honestly, you're not helping yourself if you're not picking him in games where he's open. Kha'Zix is incredibly frustrating to play against because of how much burst damage he has, and because he's pretty slippery. His ultimate allows him to briefly stealth and reposition, which means that he can either outplay his opponents with it or run down enemies with the bonus movement speed that it provides. Next on our agenda are AP junglers. Echo, Nidalee, Elise, Karthus, and Fiddlesticks are popping off right now in solo queue, and it's definitely in your best interests as a jungler to learn at least one of them. Let's not forget that Lilia is also coming out next patch, and we should honestly just expect every champion to either be OP on release or be weak enough that Riot overbuffs them shortly after. While there are plenty of strong junglers right now, it's actually pretty important to have at least one AP jungle pick ready because of the trend in another role, the mid lane. AD mid laners, most notably assassins, are seeing some more play as of late, and you want to have a magic damage pocket pick ready just in case of an emergency. The last thing you want to do is lose a game in champion select just because the enemy top laner or jungler reacts to a full AD composition by locking in Rammus or Malphite. This can easily be avoided if you put in a little bit of time to learn one new champion. All of these champions we just mentioned deal a ton of damage, so you're definitely able to carry games with them. Karthus especially has made an incredible turnaround this patch as a result of the insane buffs that he received. Unfortunately, the AP jungle pool is so diverse that it won't suffice to simply learn a counter pick or throw a ban out. Do your homework and try to learn someone new for next patch. A final addition to the AP jungler list we want to mention is Nunu. While full AP Nunu has yet to break into the mainstream, a lot of pro players now incorporate Hextech Protobelt into Nunu's build. For most of them, this is the sole aggressive purchase they make, and the rest of their items remain as tanky ones. Of course, you can also buy Sorcerer's Shoes if you want to deal more damage. The 10.13 AP Nunu buffs have inspired players to try and be more creative with him, and they're actually finding a decent amount of success. Nunu is also in a good spot right now because Trundle isn't. The nerfs he received did a number on him, and without the anti-tank present in the jungle, Nunu and Willump are free to thrive. That covers the jungle, so let's head into the mid lane next. No surprise here, I mean we literally just talked about this in the jungle section. AD assassins are popping off right now. Their popularity is starting a new movement in the mid lane and changing it altogether. The recent patch has resulted in a boom in Zed's play rate, and thus we're seeing more AD mid lane picks in general. Overall, he's basically tied for the spot as the most played mid laner now, and is the most popular one in high elo. The next most played would be Yasuo, so you get the idea that AD mid laners are really starting to gain traction. Don't forget those Aurelia buffs coming up either. The train doesn't stop. The presence of more physical damage alone creates a different tone in the mid lane. Control mages that prefer to farm up are suddenly riskier blind picks than before. On top of this, tank and bruiser mid laners are now so much more appealing. For example, some high elo players have defaulted to picking Camille as a counter pick to other AD mid laners. We haven't seen her in the mid lane for a while, and Zed's rise in popularity has brought her back, even if it's only by a little bit. There are also some Malphite picks thrown in here and there, and it's arguable that AD mid laners actually have a positive impact on the meta as they actually open up more diversity. There's some more room for niche picks to find success now, but maybe mages need a little bit of love. If AD mid laners prove to be too powerful, perhaps a 5 armor buff to Seeker's Armguard might be an option that Riot needs to consider. The next topic we want to go over is the nerf to Unsealed Spellbook that's coming up. While champions across all roles dabble into the use of Spellbook, two of the more prominent users of this keystone are Twisted Fate and Galio. Try to bust out those final games on these guys for this patch because it's receiving a pretty major nerf next patch. It'll definitely still be viable, but be warned that the nerf will definitely feel noticeable next patch. We expect the initial cooldown to go up by a whole minute, and even once you've cycled through the summoner spells to lower the cooldown, you're still going to have to wait 30 more seconds than before to switch to a new one. If you are a player that utilized this keystone, make sure to reevaluate how important it is to you. It might be preferable to switch to more mainstream keystones next patch, but that's mostly subjective because it depends on your playstyle and also which champions you plan to play. That's a wrap for the mid lane. Next up is the bottom lane. Alright, first up, let's talk about the bottom lane champion pool right now. Just like our analysts mentioned in the last episode of our meta update, a new wave of bot laners has arrived. Like they predicted, Ashe and Jhin have managed to find their footing in the meta. Honestly, Ashe has done a little bit more than that. She's quickly risen to the top of the ranks and proven that she's arguably the strongest marksman in the entire game right now. In contrast to Zed's presence in the mid lane right now, Varus' dominance in the bottom lane actually limited the diversity in bottom lane. If you couldn't put up with Varus' poke, you'd get bullied and remain irrelevant throughout the entire game. Riot hit Varus pretty hard, and many new, or maybe it's appropriate to say old, bot laners are seeing more play as a result. And unsurprisingly, Ezreal is doing pretty well still. He's still the most popular bottom lane pick. I wouldn't count him out of the fight just yet. In fact, I wouldn't even entertain the thought. Players are banning him out pretty heavily in high elo still. His 30% ban rate in Platinum and higher comes to show that players still find it extremely frustrating to play against him. It's pretty clear that in the bottom lane, the ability to bully your opponents is pretty important. Varus illustrated this as his dominant laning alone could snowball into victories for his team. Next patch, the replacements look like they're going to be Caitlyn, Ashe, and Draven. Varus, at least in high elo, was one champion who could answer these champions. His insane poke and gank setup could put them extremely behind, and playing a lane bully from behind doesn't feel right. Caitlyn and Draven especially rely quite heavily on winning the laning phase, but it's much more plausible now than it was before. Let's not forget the fact that Caitlyn is actually receiving a small buff next patch to her movement speed and her base attack damage. The base attack damage should help her out quite a bit in the early game, while the extra movement speed will make her much better in the late game. Winning lane is extremely important, so picking aggressive picks like these should help you guys win more games. The reason bot lane pressure is so important is because it's right next to the Dragon Pit. Dragon Souls have a significant impact over which team can close out the games. Of course, there's a little bit of RNG involved, but 3 of the 4 Dragon Souls have a noticeable impact in every single game, while the last one can feel pretty oppressive to play against from time to time. With that covered, let's wrap things up by running through supports. YUUMI is receiving a buff next patch. Will she come back? Well, the truth is that YUUMI never left. Although she's much weaker than before, YUUMI still remains a popular pick and is still a target ban in the eyes of many players. YUUMI's win rate took a drastic turn for the worse after her 10.13 nerf, but this buff should hopefully help her stabilize a little bit. It's a pretty well thought out buff too. She's receiving some more mana when she activates her passive, but of course, that means she'll have to jump off of her allies more often. YUUMI players will have ways to replenish their mana, but will have to risk their lives in order to do so. Considering that YUUMI's biggest strength is how safe she is, this is an excellent response that provides her some extra strength while also making it easier to play against her. In high elo, the 2 most prominent supports at the moment are LULU and SENNA. Headed into next patch, this likely isn't going to change either. Both these champions are drawing a hefty amount of bans, and Lulu's ban rate in high elo comes extremely close to YUUMI's. Lulu provides some incredible utility, most notably with her ultimate and W. Lulu's W is a rather interesting spell, as it has 2 completely different effects based on whether she casts it on an ally or an enemy. The versatility and options Lulu has with her abilities gives players a ton of different opportunities to carry games, whether it's by peeling for backliners and ensuring their safety, or giving her frontliners a boost. She has plenty of different ways she can have a meaningful impact. SENNA, on the other hand, is a pretty chaotic pick. She's a support marksman after all, and she continues to create more and more diversity in the bottom lane as a result. Her presence opens up opportunities for more gold-reliant champions like Set and Maokai to thrive in the bottom lane as well. On top of this, she deals a lot of damage and also has tons of utility built into her kit. While SENNA isn't finding the same amount of success in low elo, high elo players should definitely pick her up and enjoy the amount of agency she has over her games. In contrast, there are 2 low elo power picks that our analysts heavily suggest looking into for next patch. As most of you guys probably can guess, Brand is one of them. He's an absolute demon in low elo, as his high damage output makes it very clear that supports can definitely carry. Players in low elo also aren't as prepared to punish him and are more likely to get poked down by him. Otherwise, Brand players are able to find random takedowns, which lead them to snowballing and taking over games. The other power pick in low elo is a similar one, in Swain. He's receiving some massive buffs next patch and will continue to dominate low elo, especially as a result. That's going to cover our 10.15 meta update. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you can stay updated with all the different kinds of content that we're releasing. With that said though, I wish you guys the best of luck on Summoner's Rift and hope to catch you in our next video.